Hi, Patty. How are you?
I'm good, Ali. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. So, Irreverent launched today in the US on
Yeah,
Peacock. It's so exciting. Have you
thank
seen
you.
any feedback?
No, I've been really crook for a few days. I've just gotten out of bed and I haven't kind of looked yet. I looked at my phone when I woke up and there were a lot more texts than normal.
Mhm.
And I haven't read any of them yet. So no is the answer. It's that fresh and the time zones are that different that I'm yet to make a cup of tea and have a look.
Oh, well, that's really exciting. I mean, when I first watched the show, what really stuck out to me was the realistic community that was created between all of these characters. How were you able to make sure like that you were able to create that? Was it the chemistry between the actors or was it the writing?
I think you always rely on the chemistry between the actors for sure. We put a hell of a lot of effort into casting, but certainly at the writing stage, it was always an intention. It was always the intention to make a show about community. Like you've absolutely hit the nail on the head. I grew up. I'm the son of a Christian minister, a reverend, and I grew up in a manse next to a church in tiny little small town communities with my sisters and my brother and my parents and it was always my intention right from the outset 12 years ago when I started working on this thing uh, to to make a show about the beauty of connection and the beauty of community. So if that's landed, and I'm really glad it's landed for you, then it comes from truth. You know, all those people are based on people or amalgams of people, and I think that's how you get authentic writing. You steal from real life.
And I mean, I really feel like when I'm watching it that I'm actually in that community. Like you feel like you get to know each of these characters, and it's such even like Paulo and Daisy's relationship. Like I just think that's such like a real like seeing it unfold. And I think it's cool to hear that it came from your life and people that you knew because that was actually my next question. How did you get the idea from this show? Because I for this show because I think it's just so complex and it's emotional, but it's funny. It's just it really has a mix of everything.
Thank you. This is great. I mean, I'm happy to just go on mute. You can just just this. My ego is getting under control. I love this, Ellie. Thank you. Um, the idea came from my childhood. I mean, I grew up in a small country congregation. Dad's a minister, and mum and dad were, devout Christians, of course, but they were also kind of renegades, and they were, theologically focused for sure. They, loved they loved Jesus and the Bible and all that sort of thing, but their focus was around, love and connection and people, and so particularly dad was a bit of a renegade. He'd break the rules and he'd protest, and he was a big kind of socially left, progressive type person. He's been arrested a couple of times. He's been to prison, and so I love the idea of someone who breaks the rules in order, which arguably was Jesus as well. The feminist before feminism was cool, and so someone who believed in love and the power of connection and the power of service and broke whatever the rules of the day were to do those things. And that was my parents, so incredible inspiration. So I just extrapolated that out to, mum and dad were protesters and agitators. And I thought, what if, they were both legitimate people, not fake identities or crooks, but what if the person had a skill set of a criminal, but they were charged with doing this thing, and in order to take care of these people, that in order to pretend to take care of these people to stay alive,
Mhm.
that this character actually started loving these people by acts of service, and I think it works really well. It's all based on stuff from my life. Daisy, the character you mentioned that you love with Mac, that's my little sister. That's and she has a health condition through season one that my sister lives with, and so it's all kind of taken straight out of real stuff. But certainly that the premise of a reverend who is a little bit different and who put people first more than a slavish adherence to biblical teachings came straight out of my personal life. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just seeing how when Paulo gets to Clump, the way he brings the community together. There were so many moments where I was laughing at one point and then like I was tearing up. It was so,
Oh,
that comedic timing was perfect, I thought, in the show, but also the just the emotions. It really evoked emotions. And I think no matter where you are in the world, you can relate to it, even if you're not in Clump or Australia. It really, it sits with you.
thanks,
And
Sally. I'm really
no
glad.
problem. I really enjoyed the show. And so I guess you were saying 12 years that it had started. And I mean, even throughout your whole life, you'd been working on it. But really, what was the timeline of the show from like the very start all the way through production and then to today with the premiere?
It was a long and winding road. Um, in 2010 was my final year at film school, and me and my friends made a 22-minute pilot. We shot it. It was not good. I'll be honest. It was a student film called Godsend. But it was this idea, this premise, this character. It was all exactly the same. It was just that it was all Australian. Um, and that, we were really proud of the idea, and then it went on, and then it was optioned and developed and pitched and all this sort of thing for a few years, and didn't go anywhere, much like most projects. And then I started working at Matchbox Pictures, in Melbourne and then in Sydney, and I was working my way up through the development team as a writer, an in-house writer and development person, and I got the chance to pitch it early, and it went through probably 4.5 years of scripted development
Oh,
at Network, and eventually NBC. Peacock came on board and totally bought into the vision for the show, and Netflix Australia came on to support the Australian release as well. So look, it was the longest, most intense thing I've ever done developing the show over years. We had, personnel changes and every possible thing. It got up, it fell over, it got up, it fell
yeah.
over. But what that meant was that by the time we got the cameras out and started filming, we'd been down every road and we'd thought about it so deeply that we were quite certain about what we were doing.
Yeah, so it's definitely been a long journey. And then even throw the pandemic into all of that, did that affect it at all?
Intensely. We really started plotting hard kind of right at the start of the pandemic, and so the entire show was plotted and worked out at a story level on Zoom. Like most TV shows, we use a writer's room model, and we all sit around and break story with whiteboards. We weren't able to do that on this one. Zoom rooms are not as cool. They're a lot trickier.
Yeah.
So that was, and then when we got up to Far North Queensland where we filmed, there was no air travel except for cast who you had to put in hotel quarantine and all that sort of thing. So we had me and our script editor Ali were the only people up there. Our script producer, all our writers were at the other end of the country. They couldn't even visit. They never set foot on set. So it was very difficult producing through a pandemic. Cast movements were difficult. Crew movements were difficult. And it was incredibly hot up there. There was insane wildlife. We had storms and everything. So it was, I would say, in a word, an adventure.
That, I mean, it's insane all that you wouldn't even think that a pandemic would hit like that and really mess up so much. It's crazy that from the
Yeah.
writers to even just moving the cast around. But on a brighter note, what are you more excited, or what are you most excited for the viewers to see this?
Oh God, I'm excited for so much. I'm really excited for them to see a lot of the surprises. There's 4 or 5 things that happen throughout the show that are quite unexpected, and spin the show in a story sense, in a character sense, in a tonal sense, on its head a few times. So I'm really excited for people to watch, and they're watching one show and then something swings around. They're watching something a bit different. Most of all, I'm excited. I hope that people take away beautiful characters and beautiful relationships. Mac and Daisy, Mac and Piper, Daisy and Cameron, those sorts of things that are different and beautiful and broken, but kind of upward looking and that tell stories of the belief in people and in human connection as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think, I mean, going back to COVID for a second, this is a time where human connection is so important. And even like when there's times where we feel so isolated, and I think this show is such a great example of there's always someone around for you and there's always a community there for you.
Yeah.
And I know you said that some of the sisters, I mean, some of the characters were based on your sister and then your parents. Is there any character that you relate to the most?
I've thought about this before. I've been asked before. Look, I think I mean Mac possibly. I'm certainly not a criminal. I am physically nothing like Colin Donnell, that's for sure. I wish. Um, but I think someone, I think I'm often the straight man. I'm never the funniest guy. I'm never the kookiest person, but I'm often the person that will kind of try and help people work through a situation. So I guess in that way, but there's bits of me and lots of different characters in the show. I'm not Mac, that's for sure. But because Mac dominates the story and he's our eyes and our ears through it, and I'm writing certainly not all the show, but a portion of it. I feel like when I write, I become Mac because it's my way through the story.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I feel like for everyone, each of these characters, there's someone that you can relate to, and it can be multiple of them, or it can be just one of them. I feel like they're just made so down to earth. And in terms of scenes, are there any that you hold close to your heart?
Yeah, there's a few. I mean, episode 10, there are a number of scenes where, these are spoilers, so I'm not sure how you handle these in press, but where Mac is saying his goodbyes, which I think are beautiful. There's the finale scene between Mac and Piper. I'll always hold as very special. In episode 7, Wayne Blair has a couple of scenes with Colin and with Annalise around the disappearance of his wife, which I find incredibly moving. Um, and certainly whenever I think of favorite scenes, one that really sits with me is, for personal reasons, is the scene where Daisy tells Mac about the condition that she lives with and opens up for the first time, and he listens. And not only is it, I think, a beautifully performed scene by Colin and by Tegan, but it happens to be the last scene that we shot after 7 months. That was the final day, final scene, and I remember sitting behind the monitors with Lucy, the director, and we were just crying because it was the end of the shoot, it was the end of the journey, and it was this scene that meant so much to me and so much to my sister, who'd consulted on the scene and written that scene with me. So that one is the one that I think probably lands the hardest in my heart.
Yeah, there's a lot for the viewers to look forward to this season. And it just, these emotions, I mean, I really couldn't believe how much I connected to the show and the characters. Just, it feels like a real community. And I guess for my last question, are there any memorable behind the scenes during productions that you have, either with the cast or maybe like a moment you just shared?
Oh, Ali, I could fill a book with them. I mean, the moment we started rolling was very, very special. There's one moment that wasn't with cast or crew that really struck me because of the community thing. We were shooting in a town called Mission Beach up in the far north, and we were, a huge unit, lots of trucks, lots of people coming in. We were worried about being an annoyance on the town, and the town really embraced us. And I remember that really landed for me in pre-production. I was walking along the beach, and I was walking past where they were building the church. I was watching all the builders working, and I took my phone out to take some pictures of the church. And this little voice behind me said, "You can't take pictures." And I turned around. There's this 7-year-old girl with her hands on her hips telling me I wasn't allowed to take pictures. I said, "Why?" And she said, "It's not a real church. It's a movie set, and it's top secret." And I said, "Oh, is it? What's the movie?" She's like, "I don't know, but I'm going to be in it." I said, "Oh, what's your name?" And she introduced herself, and she told me that she was going to be an extra with her stepdad, and that if I wanted to be in the movie as well, I had only had to go down to the information center and talk to Helen, and bring my measurements, and I might be able to be in the movie too. And she was beaming with excitement. She was protective of the show. She didn't want this tourist taking pictures of this film set and ruining the illusion. And she was 7, chatting away about how excited she was to be in a movie. And of course, I didn't correct her that it was a TV show, or that, I was the showrunner. But she was so proud, and it was just such a beautiful moment for me. She walked away, and I called the extras coordinator straight away and told him her name, and got her straight on the show. But it was just that thing of this town embracing us as we were creating a community. This real community was becoming a part of us, and that ran the whole way through production.
Yeah, that's such a sweet moment. That's so great to hear. Well, thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for all your answers. They were great.
Thanks for watching it and appreciating it. That's really, really kind. So
No problem. I hope to see more.
thanks. Me too.